So, as I also promised, and of course, guys, if you want to do any questions in the meantime, you can go ahead and do it. I don't have any kind of problem. I wanted to not only give you this small introduction of who I am and how I became a material artist, but I also wanted to give you an introduction of what I learned in the last 5 years as a material artist. Now, in this presentation, when I was talking with Mai, he told me that you were also interested in learning a little bit of Photoscan data. This last year, I worked a lot with Photoscan data. I think I processed over 500 materials at all, but unfortunately, because of the NDAs, I can't show you anything like that. And the only material I could show you has been lost for inconvenience, so I couldn't get any pictures for it. But I'll promise that in the future, I'm thinking of releasing content on that matter to teach people about it. So this is what I learned, as a professional material artist during 5 years. Yes, and we are gonna do a back and forward between Substance Designer and the presentation. So one of the first things, what I learned was the basics of Substance Designer, and that make everything easier for us. Yes, so I'm gonna switch, yes, to Substance Designer here. Yes, there's some of the materials, and I'm gonna go to this one. So something here, just so you see, this is one of the latest materials I upload. Yes, this is a medieval roof tile, and this is a material that many people have a little bit of trouble making. Maybe some basics are kind of easy, but there's some other parts that we need to take into consideration. So the first basic of Substance Designer comes from gradients. Yes, here in the presentation, yes, we have these two gradients, and the point of showing those gradients is understanding how math works in Substance Designer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick these notes here. Yes, I'm going to write this here, and I want you to show you something. So something really important here, yes, when it comes to Substance Designer, is understanding the basics that is behind. Substance Designer, yes, is built on top of math. So everything that is going on behind all of this graph is math. Yes, grayscale information is what we use to translate that math into something visible for artists. Yes, and we are using here zeros and ones. So black, yes, it's a 0. Yes. Why? First of all values here are 0, it's set for close to the alpha, but black means there's actually no information. White, yes, it's full 1. And the reason it's full 1 is because you have capped information. You can't go higher than 1, you can't go lower than 0. Despite sometimes you may see, I don't know, maybe a random seed here going 3000, that's all right. It's just a random seed. It's just a parameter. You can make different changes, but the values are always between 1 and 0. So when you're working in Substance Designer, you need to understand two things. You never get 0 or 1 in your height. Why? If I were just to create here a normal map, yeah, and let's get a shape node. Sorry, that's not a node, shape node. And from this shape node, I get a disk. Yes, and then I bevel this. You're gonna see that we have a shape here that has kind of like a small blur around. If I pull this into the normal, you're gonna see two things. First, you're gonna see this area here. This is like the gradient we are looking at. But this area that is pure white, yes, is capped. That means we can't have more information than that. And if you plug this into your textures, you're gonna see that you're not gonna have anything. There's gonna be no details, there's gonna be nothing. You could only add color to that. You couldn't add any kind of surface details. So we want to avoid that 1, and we also want to avoid that 0 because that means there's actually nothing. It's just pitch black and it's not really good for textures. So when it comes to height, yes, black and white information means that 0 is your lowest point, yes, in your material, meaning there's nothing, and 1 is your highest point in your material. So if you want to build shapes, yes, you need gradients. Why? If I have, yes, and let's do a small new graph here just to give it a small test. Yes, I'm gonna remove this here, and I'm just gonna create a quick AO node. If I have here, for example, a shape node, and to this shape node, I'm gonna make a disk, yes, and I plug this into my inputs, you're gonna see here that we have a disk that has a really hard cut, and it has a lot of pinching here. Yes, this pinching is because of the scale and the selection factor. Yes, if you change the selection factor, it's gonna get better, but in this case, it's not. Why? If I zoom in, yes, into my shape, you're gonna see that every single pixel of the edge is really sharp. Now let's say I want to create a bevel. So a bevel would be kind of this edge being a little bit rounder, allowing for light to bounce off from there and kind of like highlighting the overall shape. So if we know the basics about grayscale information being 0 and 1, that means that if we want to make a smooth area, yes, kind of like a round shape there, we want to have a gradient. So for this, I'm gonna blur my shape. And you see here what's going on. The blur is allowing me to expand all the pixels, yes, into different values. So we go from pure white to pure black, and all that we have in the middle helps. So I'm gonna pull this here, I'm gonna plug it in, and you see the pinch has been removed. Yes, and my shape has a more defined shape. Yes. Now, this is actually quite useful to know because it allows you to generate or create different shapes. Like for example, yes, if I go here to my rock graph, you're gonna see, give it some time to render because it's a heavy graph. I'm working on 4K, so it might take a small little amount. If you come here and you check how I created my rocks, and we go to this, you're gonna see the actual grayscale information of my rocks, how they are not really sharp. They have this really small gradient in between. Now, to achieve this kind of gradients, what I usually do is I blur this information and then I use the levels to correct this information. Now, the more blurring you add to this, of course, the more the shape will shrink and the rounder it's gonna be the shape. With the levels, you can control this information just to get a better graph of it. Now, when it comes, like once again, to blending information, it's really important to understand that the math behind it is controlled by our blend nodes. So all of these blend nodes have different blends, yes, blend modes, sorry, and all of these have different names. Most of them, yes, are mathematical processes that we use. You know, add, subtract, multiply. When we go to max and min, that's literally the meaning of mathematical expression of the maximum point on your graph and your minimum point. Yes, so you have a lot of math expressions, and we're using those math expressions to combine different kinds of informations, yes, and try to build up something. So going back to the presentation, yes, the next step will be bringing more attention to our normal map and curvature. Why? Height, most of the times, yes, is something that I've seen a lot of students treat with a lot of harsh, yes, and this is something that Mike was saying at the beginning, and he's completely right. A lot of students tend to go with really high values. So I'm gonna show you how I did it here. If you check, the values I use in my blend nodes are really low. I'm using 0.025 in this one. 0.1, 0.01, yes, 0.52, yes, and I keep moving, but it's almost always I add kind of like a really strong value here. Yes, I'm using a really low value in my opacity as well. And that's not the only thing. I'm also using masks. Yes, that's something really important. I'm not only, oh, sorry for that. I'm not only using the opacity, yes, as a low value input, but I'm also using masks to level all that out. So if I were to bring a normal map here, yes, to which I'm gonna use a high intensity normal because I used to work like that, you're gonna see how changes started to apply, and you're not gonna see much change as we move forward. Yes, but when we get to the end, the change is gonna be highly visible to you. Why? When you're building your materials, it's important that you understand, yes, that it's not that everything you see needs to be in your material. It's all the details you put together create the material, or the composition of the overall material. So if I were to go to the end of this, you're gonna see this is how my normal map was looking for my stones here. But if I go to the last normal map, this is how it looks after, yes? And this is basically thanks to all the small things that we started adding, yes, step by step until the end. Yeah, and all of these intensities we are using are actually really low. Why? Because there's a huge difference between what it is a detail, yes, and a composition. When we talk about the composition, for example, we're talking about what's actually the main goal of the material. What's the main repeating pattern in this material? In this case, the composition of this material is going to be stones. So we have stones everywhere, and we have plaster or concrete that is holding these stones. Now, what are the details? So the details would be, yes, for example, the concrete being shaped in a way like the stone was pulled inwards. A detail would be these small parts here where it looks like the rock was chipped off. The small pebbles going around, like there has been something that after the destruction of the concrete, there's some pebbles being formed. Yes, so those are the kind of details you want to look for. And you can also have details in other places, like for example, your base color. So if you go to my base color, you're going to see there's a lot of things going on. And most of these, yes, are only on the base color because they are things, yes, details are things that add value to your artwork. They are not part of your composition. And in order to avoid it being part of your composition, you have to be able to mask it and allow it to be not everywhere, but in some places in particularly, with the right amount of intensity. So basic color and normal have all the details on your material. Yes, something super important is that a really good material is gonna look really great without a base color, but with a normal map and a height map and an ambient occlusion map, and also no roughness. If your material looks really good without the base color, then you are gonna be able to create a really great base color. Why? When we are building the base color of our materials, we usually, yes, or I particularly, what I do is I build my colors following the shape I have created previously in my normal map. So if I go back to this graph and I go back to the end, you're going to see that I'm using my curvature smooth, yes, which gives me really nice information for my branches, yes, and generate different gradient maps, which I'm using to blend all of this information. I'm also using this as mask, as you can see here. Yes, I'm using many other maps, but the curvature smooth, it's going to be the first thing I'm going to be using for this. Now, something really important that I think I changed in my latest material, the medieval roof tile, something that usually happens a lot is that when you're using your curvature for a gradient map, people tend to do the following. They tend to do gradient editor, pick gradient, and they pick a gradient from the reference, but they do a long line. This is a huge problem. Why? You are using, yes, super detailed information grayscale map, which has a lot of values and grain information, and you are giving the gradient map that information with a selection of thousands of colors. That's not going to help you. That's going to actually ruin your material because it gets too noisy. If instead of that, you do a small stroke, allowing it to have maybe 2 to 3 colors, look at this. Look at the difference now. You have actual shape in your base color. Yes, and you can see it. You can see the highlights, you can see the backgrounds. Yes, you have way more detail, and you can use that as a base to then start layering your base color. Yes, going step by step. Yes, into generating more and more detail. But again, if you want to achieve that, first you need to be able to create a really nice normal map and height map out of this. Yes, if you don't do that, then there's not going to be much information you're going to be able to use. Now, this is another tip I wanted to show with you because something I really kind of see a lot in my students and in many other artists is that they are afraid of exploring. They think that there's always one answer, yes, to all of our problems, yes. If we want to make stones, there's just one right answer. If we want to do brick walls, there's only one right answer, and that's not true. Most of the things I've done aren't like a copy of someone else's work, are things that I created by inspiring myself in others and then doing exploration. The screenshot you see here, yes, is a screenshot from one of my artworks. The artwork I did was this one, yes. Now, you see that there's a lot of patterns going around. You have this one, this one, this one, this one. You have this kind of details. This material, the actual goal of this one was not making marble, was exploring different shapes and patterns inside Substance Designer. Yes, and in fact, the screenshot is from that material. This screenshot here shows all the different combinations I was trying out in order to make all of these patterns. And I never choose those patterns or to make those patterns. Yes, they were patterns that I came across while exploring. I was trying to see, okay, so what does this node do? What's the function of this one? So I started to combine them together and try to test out. And it's actually quite an enjoyable process because instead of forcing yourself to get things right, just like it's a live or die situation, you are allowing yourself to explore, to have fun, just to be more, let's say, free when working with the software. You don't need to be that rigid when trying to learn this software. Yeah. When you're working, you're going to have people behind you telling you that you need to hurry. So while you are studying and you have the possibility of do something that you like, take that chance to do something that you really enjoy doing and also have a really great time while you're at it. Yeah, don't try to rush it, because it's not gonna be really helpful for you as well. So again, this year I made a lot of PhotoScan data, yes, and it has a lot of advantages. I've been working with scan data for a long time though. I think since I started, especially when it came Quixel Bridge. Mostly what I did was kind of combined my materials with PhotoScan data. At that time, there was something going on that people kind of were saying like using PhotoScan data to complete your materials is cheating, and I feel that nowadays that has changed a lot. Gladly, because that's not true. When you're a professional and you're working on a studio, they want results. They don't want methods. They want the results they need for the environment they need. So if you're able to use scan data that the studio provide you, plus your substance designer skills to make a unique material that's going to be in the game you're going to be working, that's all right. Yes, you need to understand that you need to leave a little bit behind your proud on I have to do only substance designer material, and start to think, okay, how can I get the best result with the skills I have, with the tools I have. Substance designer at the end is just a tool. Yes, it's not the all-powerful software of texture creating. It's a tool. I use Substance Designer for a lot of things. I use Substance Designer to create painter materials, painter tools. I've used this to create processing images tools. So basically, I don't know, let's say I have images I want to process in a specific way, take different colors out of them, fix information of images that they're not even gonna be textures, and I've used it as well. Yes, you can literally use it as Photoshop as well. So while doing specifically PhotoScan data, only PhotoScan, I realized that there's way more to it. Yes, that it only meets CI, and there's a lot of advantages, of course. There's also disadvantages, and those disadvantages are mostly kind of in terms of, let's say, how hard it is, but how much it's going to take your computer to actually help you achieve the level of quality, because working with scan data is really heavy. Like, I think that in one day of working with PhotoScan data, I filled 2 terabytes of disk space, more or less, if I were to work one full day of work, and I didn't delete anything. So it has its disadvantages, but it also has a lot of advantages. It has super high quality. So something really important is that you can't go better than PhotoScan data. There's so much you can do with your eye and with Substance Designer, but a camera can catch way more detail than maybe your eye can. Yes, and on top of that, in Substance Designer, you can't be that precise about certain details. Or at least if you have to, it will take you a lot of work that PhotoScan data just does it naturally. Now, it also has a low technical complexity. It's really not that hard to learn how to do PhotoScan. It's a different workflow you need to get used to. You need to get used to going out, taking pictures. Yes, you need to know that, okay, maybe the weather of the day really influences on how your material is going to be. If you have more light or less light, it's going to create shadows that they might kind of bother you. Yes, and something that is really good is that all of this information is editable. So you can edit all of this information and you can use it to blend other materials. Now, here is where I don't have any image to show you. I'm sorry about that, but I can give you an example with one of my artworks. So when I'm doing PhotoScan data, I always look for broken data in places of low light. Why? PhotoScan data is based on you taking pictures, yes, of a specific object, and those images going into a software that is going to process this into 3D, and from that 3D object you make a bake and you take your maps. Then you're going to do some editing in Painter or Designer, and then you get your texture done. Now, there's a small issue with all of this, and it's in the photo session shoot. You can't control the weather, so the lighting environment is going to be different every single day you go out. That means that you're going to find different problems when you're trying to process this. Now, you can do some pre-processes like in Lightroom or Photoshop to kind of clean that up, but there are some things you will not be able to fix. And let me give you an example with one of my artwork. This is not PhotoScan, yes. Regardless, it has the way I rendered, it can show a better explanation of what I want to do. Let's say Yes, I am taking these pictures for my photoscan. Not realistic enough, but let's say I'm doing that. And I have the light source coming from the top. This area here, yes, it's pitch black. So in my 3D model, yes, and also in my texture, this is gonna have a lot of broken information. Why? Because there's no light that is actually reaching that area. Cameras work just as our eyes. Light hits an object, it bounces back, and the camera captures that light and generates a digital image. If there's actually no light coming from there, it's just gonna be pitch black, and that means that when the software is gonna be constructing your 3D object, yes, in reality capture, that's gonna be broken data or incomplete data, let's say, and we need to fix that, yes. Unfortunately, for the moment, I can't tell you how to fix that. Yes, once again, working in the industry has that kind of disadvantages for the moment, but in the future, I'll promise I'll be uploading more things about it. So another advantage and feature of scan data is that I can combine, yes, to make new materials with Substance Designer or enhance my own materials. So the best example is the one I have here. Yes, that is my medieval roof tile. Yes, and you can see around here that we're going to come to this later. So in order to enhance my material, what I did is I used a Megascan, yes, atlas of leaves and some sticks going around, just to give it more like a feel of, okay, this is a roof tile, this is on top of a house, so leaves could fall on top of it, and I wanted to give this really small, nice detail. I also have done it before. Yes, with other materials. I think here this is a good example. Yes, all of these kind of scattering that we see around, it's layers and layers of scan data that they look good. Yes, because they are scan data and I was able to blend it. Now, this doesn't mean that by doing this, you're gonna fix your materials. Using scan data to add value to your materials can be hard. Why? First, you need to know how to blend them. Yes, that's really, really important. You need to know how to blend them, and blending information from scan data to Substance Designer is not that easy at first. Once you've done it 100 times, of course it gets easier. But the thing is that as you're using photoscan data, you're using the most realistic textures and objects you can get. That means that if your materials are not up to the level, yes, of this scan data, the difference is going to be too much. It's going to generate too much contrast, and it's not going to look good. Yes, despite you blend them well and everything, it's not going to look good if you don't combine two things that are up to the same level. Yes. Now, doing things like that, like this, allows you to learn another thing, is the combination of normal information. So if I go back here to my graph, you're going to see here I am blending normal information. Yes, in fact, let me output this in 3D so I can see tiles. So there is something really important when you are blending scan data with, your own materials. First, if you use Quixel Bridge data, your height information, it's going to be really bad. It's going to be not good at all. Like, I don't like scan information from Quixel. It's not kind of trying to beef them. It's just that the way they treat it, it's not my favorite, and there's some materials that are really old, so there's actually no update from them, and that's not that good. But mainly because their height information, yes, here comes in 8 bits, and 8 bits for height, it's horrible because it creates a lot of artifacts. The other thing is that the information is a little bit too soft, and you have to fix it on the height. But when you blend them, yes, and you get a really nice result, like for example here, and then you go to your normal map, you're going to see that the normal map looks kind of good, but there's missing information. And in fact, can you see the difference between the background and this leaf? It has some kind of like noise or blue noise on top. That's because of the 8 bits, basically. And also because we're not using the right normal. If I combine the right normal, you see that the leaves now transform into something a little bit more soft. Yes. Now for this, you're going to need two things. First, you're going to need a mask. Yes, this mask, I always take it from the high blend. High blend is your best option when you're trying to blend two types of information. Yes, and this, we're going to use a normal blend node. Now, normal blend node, it's something I use for specific cases and scenarios. This comes to moments where I have my own normal map of my own material, and I want to add another material that has a mask on it to this material I'm making. Yes, so what I achieve is I add this normal to this normal, yes, using the normal blend by using a mask. Now, let's say I didn't want to add leaves and I wanted to add some kind of stone detail to my tiles. Let's say I went to Quixelbridge and I download a Grange for stones. Yes, what I would have done, yes, I would have come here to normal and I would have looked for normal combine. Normal combine is kind of like the same as normal blend, but it works in a different way. So I'm gonna go for black and white spots too. Sorry, sound may change a little bit because I need to move my mic in order to use my keyboard. So I'm gonna just generate, yes, small noise. Yes, I'm using the high pass here to remove some contrast of the image. Yes, and then I do all levels so I can achieve something like this. Yes, and then I'm gonna do a normal. So now I have two normals, yes, and I can combine them here by using the normal combine. So now you can see that I put one normal on top of the other one. Yes, of course, the intensity of these can be fixed by the normal combine. It has to be fixed by something else. Like for example, in this case, what you can do is another high pass grayscale. Yes, if you lower this quite a lot, something like this, you're gonna get a really low amount, see? Or you can go and do a small blur as well to lower a little bit the intensity of the information. That's also going to help you a lot. Again, you need to be really, really careful with the amount of details you want to use. Yes, and you can start going by that. You can also, of course, mask this. Let's say I could also use a blend mode, use a Gaussian spots here, combine them here like this, and then go for multiply. This is going to allow me to have specific areas with this, and it's not going to be everywhere. So now if I pull this in, you see there's some areas that have this kind of, let's say, damage on it. And of course, you can lower the normal intensity. Another really nice trick is if you have your normal, let's say, as I always do in 5, and you want to lower this, you can use the normal intensity node to remove a little bit of the intensity. But in this case, it's a little bit useless. You already have this node. The normal intensity is more useful for specific maps. Like for example, if I were to get this normal map and lower the intensity from here, I could go normal intensity. Yeah, and there I start lowering to make it more soft. Yeah. So going back to the presentation, there's a final message I wanted to give, and it's that it took me 5 years and 1,000 of attempts to learn this. It is not easy, but it's also not impossible. And I say this because the last months when I built my community, yes, I have a community called Future Material Artists, again, where I teach artists about material art. I realized there's a lot of people that is worried about becoming a material artist because there's actually no guide for it. You know, there's a lot of people helping environment art, prop art, and other areas, but material art is something that it has come really new and doesn't have really much visibility, which makes it hard to find information in the internet and makes it hard to kind of like get into an actual job from it. It is hard, it is, I'm not gonna deny that, but it's not impossible. I mean, I did it and there's a lot of other people that did it. So I wouldn't I wouldn't kind of let my head down only because it's hard for it.